Good evening, everyone. We're glad to have Chad Sutton join us this evening for our learning series. I've known Chad a couple of years now, and it has been truly inspirational for me to get to know Chad. I have a lot of respect for him and what he has done in his journey. We're going to talk about multifamily investing and how he's went about doing that and building generational wealth. As you know, that's the kind of the name of our learning series is accelerating to generational wealth. But to kind of get started, Chad, why don't you tell us a little bit about your growing family? Because I know you had some pretty exciting news a couple of nights ago. I saw. So
that's right. Fantastic. Yeah. Well, thank you, Brian and Jana, for having me on here. Yes, I've known you guys for, I guess it is a couple of years now, and I guess I could say I know you back when, right? Yeah. So we both go back to the early days. But yeah, so my name is Chad Sutton. I am a husband, a father, and we just realized that, well, we know the family is growing. We just realized in what way. So we popped a balloon the other day and it was blue. So pretty excited to have a little boy on the way. And you know, if you ask the Labradoodle that we have at home, she's the firstborn, you know, and in fact, I think we were looking at her one day and I think my wife said, you know, you were the best purchase we ever made. She, just like dogs do, on point, looked at us like, I'm adopted, you know, and it was incredible. But, you know, beautiful little girl, 2.5. She is our world, and she is now going to be graced with a beautiful little baby brother here in June. So we're very excited about that.
Man. Yeah, that is exciting. I got to see that a couple of days ago on Facebook, a couple of nights ago.
So we did it on Zoom. We had to be compliant with everything, you know. So
yeah. So, but so let's kind of jump into how you kind of got started into, you know, multifamily investing and that, and how you started there and where you are today, meaning with Quantro. Yeah, Quantro Capital. Sorry about that. So yeah, kind of give us that journey.
Well, how much time do you have?
Well, we got a couple of hours yet. So.
There we go. No, so there's really two parallel trains that were running next to each other while this was going on, right? And the first one, I think it comes to my money culture and how I grew up, right? So like Lauren, and by the way, Lauren, great talk. I can't vouch enough for the mindset stuff, right? I mean, I also have a coach. My team has a coach. And, you know, without mindset, I mean, strategy is only 5% of the battle, right? So absolutely perfect on that. Anyway, so two parallel trains, right? You go back to the money culture and how I really was raised. So like Lauren, you know, I was raised in a household where you were taught to work hard, right? You go to school, you get good grades. You know, we were rewarded for good grades. We actually, when I got to the high school age, I had a job shoveling horse manure, right, as a stable boy. So I mean, my dad would always remind me, does to this day, you know, remember you're only 2 steps away from shoveling horse manure, right, in a different way. So grew up with hard work, being, you know, money comes with hard work, right? And so I followed that dream religiously. It was, you know, and I looked at my parents who were better than their parents, and my grandparents who were better than my great grandparents, you know, in terms of what they achieved in life. And so that was what the goal was. You know, for me, it was go to school. It was get a degree before you have children, you know, so that you're not having to do that at night. And it was, you know, get that good corporate job, work until you're 65 and make $1 million, right? That was the American dream. Well, I'm here to tell you the American dream is broken, right? It is not the way. And I've been very fortunate that I was able to live a couple of lifetimes by age 32 and realize this before it was too late. So hopefully we can share some of that tonight and, you know, take from it what you will. But as you know, as I'm going through this first train we're talking about, I get into corporate America, right? And I became an engineer. I went to the University of Tennessee. I studied aerospace engineering. And by the way, I knew one of them was going to crack the aerospace engineering joke. I thought it was going to be him, but Jana got to it first. Yeah. So the rocket science.
It's not rocket science, right? We've heard that. So
exactly. But anyway, so I go to the University of Tennessee. I study aerospace engineering because I'm good with numbers and I played with Legos and Connects growing up. So the world told me I need to be an engineer, right? and was fortunate. I actually, right place, right time, right? I did well in school, and I stumbled into an internship with NASA. Right? So that's where the rocket scientist joke comes from. I did work for NASA Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, for a number of years, back when the space shuttle was still flying, and back when what as the Falcon 9 project with SpaceX was being developed at NASA. This was before Elon Musk, really had his space program going. So played that game for a little while, and got to, build big engines and blow them up and things like that. It was really fun, really nerdy things. And went from there into true corporate America, where I did a lot of hardcore engineering for in the aviation space, for commercial airliners, for military aircraft, helicopters. So these are called gas turbine engines. So, and by the way, if anyone has any questions or wants to interrupt me, I'll be watching the chat box. I'm a little goofy. I'm a little bit of a redneck, and I am a huge nerd, if you can't tell already. Okay. I come from the engineering field, and there's not much nerdier things than that. So, feel free to poke at me a little bit. But I get into this field, right? And I'm going through with the same mindset that it is, the harder you work, the more you're rewarded. And I was going to be the CEO, right? I got into a Fortune 50 company at this point. I'm working for a little company called GE. You might have heard of it, right? And it was great, right? I was going to be the leader of that company. And I was fortunate to have some big responsibilities early, and rose through the ranks, and got to a certain level of senior engineer. And then I looked to my left one day, and I looked to my right, Brian, and I saw my senior engineers, and I saw my principal engineers, and I was like, you know what, if I keep down this path, I'm going to be doing exactly this 20 years from now. I'll just be really good at it. And there's two companies in the world I can work for. So by the age of like 24, 25, I realized, man, if you over specialize, you're stuck, right? Yeah. And so this is trading time for money at this point. Like I'm a very expensive and expendable laborer, is all an engineer really is, And so looking at that, around that time is when, and I may have my years off, but around that time is when GE's stock price went from about $40 a share to $4 a share. Many of you may remember that if you had some of your 401k in that, So that's where, I was able to get some very interesting experience traveling the world on GE's dollar. And that was where, I was asked to kind of be an internal business consultant for them, because I had engineering experience. I understood, product lines and development. And I also had a little bit of business knowledge from running program level stuff. And so that was a very unique experience, and opened my eyes, one, to how small the world really is, right? And how similar, the American culture is to other cultures around the world, and then how different we are at the same time, but how we're all people, and we're all the same, And so what that time taught me was effectively, how to look at a business for the profit and loss level, and figure out, well, how do we make certain improvements to product strategy, things like that, to save money and effectively increase the value of the company. So that's kind of where I started to learn things about that. And we're talking about how I got to where I am and how I left the W-2, right?
Yeah, and I want you to really cover that point, because I heard you talk about this previously, and I think it would be great for those that are listening tonight to really hear that story. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So going through that for a little while, that led to becoming a pretty young executive with General Electric, and I think it was somewhere around 200 million in purchasing budget that I was managing, global strategy. I did a lot of Asian travel, European travel, Scandinavia, places like that. And this is a small number, by the way. I was a young executive that gave me a little bit of stuff. Like billions is big for them. This was small. And what I discovered, not only am I still trading time for money, and guys, the higher you get in one of these corporate jobs where you're trading time for money, the target on your back gets bigger and bigger with every step you take up the ladder, is what I'm going to say, right? More people are gunning for your job, more people are out to get you, and mistakes cost more money, right? So that just think of it that way. You think you're secure in a job, you're only ever 2 weeks away from termination. And so anyway, that led to this corporate purchasing strategy job, right? And so what my entire job was at this point was to manage a supply chain and make sure we're purchasing at the best rate across the board. And this was in the renewable industry. So I was working on wind turbines and hydro plants and things like that, right? Well, what that turned into was it was kind of soul sucking, and B, it was, in my opinion, despicable, because all of my suppliers were, family owned businesses, right? That happened to make transformers or switch gears or things, tangible commodities that we had to buy. And my job was to negotiate everything away from them, pay the least amount, the least possible price, and literally with the flick of we don't use pencils anymore, with the flick of my computer mouse, right, I could ruin an entire company's profit and loss for a year, and so it was a soul sucking place to be, because I was good at it, Brian.
Yeah.
I could take everything from whoever I needed to,
Yeah.
and so it was scary how good that I got at that. So anyway, the other train is starting to show up at this point, because this is kind of the corporate background, the rocket scientist joke, all that. Well, my wife and I looked down one day and we're grossing, I don't know, $250,000 a year in W-2 income. And great, good for us, right? Well, when you start looking at how much we're paying in taxes, guys, I was working until April or May, I kid you not, just to pay the government. When you look at how much we were paying in taxes, okay? I mean, it was a ridiculous tax rate. At the time we were double income, no kids, right? We had no write-offs. We had just bought a house, but we made too much money to write much off, and so that was frustrating. And we're both finding out that the better we do, the more time, the more we're married to the company, right? So I start reading every book possible, because I'm like, all right, we're doing something wrong here, because we're grossing $250,000 a year and we're not doing any better than we were when we were making $50,000 a year. Yeah. Like what's going on? The treadmill got bigger. We bought cars, we bought houses, we had student loan debt, because I mentioned the American dream was broken. The American dream, today, or most people know today, is get your job, you go to college, you get your student loans, you invest what you're able to into your 401k, and let that grow at 7% mutual funds or whatever, maybe 10% if you're lucky, right, after all the fees come out. And then you hopefully have enough of a nest egg one day to retire, and hopefully that you don't outlive your nest egg you built, right? Yep. So we discover all of that, and then kind of simultaneously, this is where I started to discover real estate, because the more books that I read, I started to realize that number one, wealth is not $1 million in the bank, guys. It's just not. Money is a commodity, right? And the value goes up and down. So a lot of people say, I want to make $1 million and then I'll be happy. No, I promise you won't. It's not, the money in the bank is not wealth. So we have to kind of blow that thought up. But the more books that I read, the more I started to realize that, hey, if we want to build wealth, we need to be buying assets. And we'll go to kindergarten and talk about it.